I'm Pauline Wiles, and I am joined today in conversation by Beth Mathews. Beth Mathews is a marine biologist, a mother, and author of the award-winning memoir, Deep Waters. Deep Waters takes the reader along on her family's nail-biting journey as Beth's life in Alaska is upended when her previously healthy husband is slammed by a rare type of stroke. And Beth and I first connected through the Bay Area Independent Publishers Association. And it was my absolute pleasure to work with her on a new author website to be a home for both her blog and her debut book. So hello and welcome.
Thank you, Pauline, for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your writing?
Sure. I guess I'll start by saying I did not set out to write a book. I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana and got my undergraduate degree in animal science and then ended up studying marine biology at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and then moved to Alaska with my husband, where we both got jobs at Glacier Bay National Park. And I studied mainly marine mammals, harbor seals, stellar sea lions, some work on humpback whales, and even briefly a little study with one of my students on sleeper sharks. And so during that career, of course, one of my important jobs was to write about my research with my students and publish that. And I enjoyed that. And then, as you mentioned, so my husband and I had a son, and when our son was 9, a crisis happened one morning on a Tuesday morning, and that is that my very healthy husband, who was a hunter and a sailor and a marine scientist who had done his field research in Alaska on walruses in remote places, and anyway, out of the blue, he has a very unusual stroke triggered by, of all things, painting and scraping our skylight, sort of bending. And that really just threw our family into turmoil, of course. And the book starts right with that inciting incident, so it's not a spoiler. But I ended up, I've always kept journals throughout my life, and not real fancy ones, they're kind of a hodgepodge. And then as a field biologist, I was trained to, of course, collect systematic data in the field, but also to be aware of any unusual event, something, predation event on harbor seals or something, to record in the moment what was happening, because sometimes those details about something rare end up being really useful. So in some ways, I think my training as a field biologist led me on the morning of that really terrifying event, with my husband being eventually medevaced from Alaska to Seattle. My instinct was to write things down, and then I did what really was the gateway. My gateway drug for writing a book was the Caring Bridge website, which now is quite popular, but back, it's a website that was very thoughtfully designed by a woman who realized that families in a medical crisis, let's say, maybe a child dealing with some kind of life-threatening illness, the caregivers cannot, it's just really hard to keep everybody in touch, because your job is to be, in that hospital room beside them. And but she invented, this would be, I think the website was created shortly before my husband's stroke, just fortuitously, maybe a couple of years before that. But it's now what we call a blog. It's sort of a one-to-many outreach, but it was really set up for families to post daily, or as often as they want, about the status of their loved one, and then have many people, come in and check on it. So I felt that caregiver overwhelm on day 2, when I realized I had not even called my husband's sisters. And so I started putting posts up. I created a Caring Bridge website, and I still remember the very first post I made. I I hesitated because it was so personal, and I had put my research writing out to the world, but not the personal writing. And then I was like, I don't have time to make 2 versions, and I hit send. And then the dialogue that ensued, the wonderful support we got from friends and family and their appreciation of my writing, just really helped us through that difficult time, and ultimately was one of a couple of seeds that got me to think that I might have a story to tell that could help other people and inspire them. And so that's sort of a part of the way I got started on writing a book.
Yeah, so at this point, I should say I've read Deep Waters. Aside from the incredible and dramatic setting of Alaska, it comes across very clearly that theme of the caregiver impact, the overwhelm. And yeah, that makes sense with hindsight that you were actually able to pull on the posts that you've done on Caring Bridge and from your own journal in order to have that source material for the book.
Thank you. Yes. I also want to add that, you know, and then of course, as I wrote, it took me 9 years to write the book. First of all, I have to say that. And I worked with wonderful editors. And one thing I realized, when you're living life, you don't think of your life as having a theme. But when you write a book, it's important, not for a novel or a memoir, when it's almost done or before it's almost done, is to kind of step back and think about, well, what is the underlying theme here? And I think it's important to mention that I came to realize that the theme in my book it's really about relationship resilience, and how a couple or a family, that sometimes a crisis can push me to do something bigger and braver than I would have done without the crisis. It doesn't mean you're glad for the crisis, but it in hindsight you realize, wow, I took some steps that I would have put off or maybe never have done to do something more ambitious. And so that it's an uplifting story. I like your feedback on that, but I think ultimately it's a positive story about how some good things can come out of difficult times.
Yes, and certainly no spoilers here for anyone who hasn't yet read Deep Waters, but I agree with that that journey for you comes through very, very clearly also.
Good.
Yeah. And so the book came out earlier in 2023, and you're now celebrating a release in audio format. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you so much. That's right. I worked through Findaway Voices to find a narrator, and Findaway Voices is under the umbrella of Spotify now, and they have I love their process. You can listen to as many narrators as you want in their list, and narrow it down based on what they've posted, their recordings. And then I narrowed it down to 3. I knew, of course, I wanted the narrator to be a woman because I am, and I needed someone who could do a good job with male and female voices. And also, I really wanted, someone who is a mother, because our relationship with our young son, who was 9 at the time, is so important to the whole story and to my husband's recovery, and in the way that our son Glenn supported me to be a stronger caregiver, just by giving me that fresh outlet of his exuberance as a kid, even though he was also very much concerned, like a grown-up would be, about his dad. But anyway, so I found the narrator I chose is a woman named Alex Picard. She's a classically trained actor and director, and now a professional narrator. Her story was that she taught acting at a college in the East Coast, and then she had 2 kids who were, growing up, and suddenly she was like, I can't be away every Friday night and every weekend. I want to be with my kids. And then as audiobooks were booming, she got into doing narration, and she has her own studio at home and works with a professional engineer. And it was just so exciting to work with her. I really appreciate, of course, so my book's about 88,000 words, and you think about that, and for someone else to read it and number one, not make any mistakes. I mean, of course, they do make some very small mistakes, but the author gets to screen, and then maybe small mispronunciations. Of an example is the town we lived in is spelled Gustavus, and locally it's pronounced Gustavus, but some people might say Gustavus. And so that was one, and yet she corrected it seamlessly. I cannot hear it. I just loved that whole process. And I'm thrilled with the book. It's available. It's out on wherever pretty much anywhere you can buy audiobooks. Spotify distributes it to 40 of the main sites, audible.com. It's at Barnes and Noble, Nook, Apple, Spotify. Just type in Deep Waters, a memoir of loss, Alaska adventure and love rekindled, or my last name, and you can find it there. And also it's available free through libraries. So I think a lot of you have discovered the joy of audiobooks through Hoopla and Libby, and it's there. So you could request it at your local library and listen for free. So.
And my sense is for a memoir like Deep Waters that listening to the audiobook will make it even more of an intimate experience versus reading.
I think so. I want to get the opinions of someone who's read the book, the print book, and then listen to it and find out if there's a difference in the feeling. I'd like to quote Alex Picard. In our first conversation, she mentioned that memoirs are sometimes a little trickier for her to narrate because the author expects the narrator to sound like them and speak like them. And she said, that she can't, there's no way she can do that, but her goal is to capture the emotional integrity of every character. And I really feel like she did. When I listened to it, it made me cry. So maybe that's not a good metric, but I think she did a wonderful job. And her background in theater certainly comes through.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent metric. I think that's definitely a bar for narration to strive for. Yeah. And while we're talking about Deep Waters, if you do intend to request it from a library, it's not too early to remind you that Beth's last name, Beth Ann Mathews, that is Mathews with one T.
Thank you, Pauline. Yes, that helps the search engines.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot that happens in an author's life when a book comes out. I know you've had a super busy year. In terms of your author platform, you already had a Squarespace website when we started working together. So what made you decide it was time to freshen it up and, in fact, move as well to a new version of Squarespace?
Good question. I paid attention to the advice I got to form a website early, and I formed it and worked with a different Squarespace designer starting in 2018. And in 2018, I thought I might publish within a year or two. I think that's a common issue of timing, ability to predict. But I'm so glad I did. And I also really wanted to get all of my research papers together. And I love taking photographs of wildlife. So I wanted the website to highlight that. And then suddenly, fast forward to 2022, and I realized, wow, my book is coming out May 2023, and I don't really have a landing page for the book. And we were at a Bay Area independent publishers meeting, and you gave a presentation, and I was just so impressed that you worked specifically with authors. That's a big deal and so helpful. And that I think you have also written, you've been a writer, and you are still a writer because you write for your website. And so I approached you, and in our conversation, you identified that the Squarespace version I had was 7.0, and that they were making a big transition to something called Fluid Engine. I won't go into those details, but I realized, boy, I could envision that my methodology on the website, and you also said the new version would have better search engine optimization, SEO, which of course, if you're writing a book, you need that. And so fortunately, we worked out our schedules. It was a little tight for both of us, but we did it right before Christmas. We did the revision, and it was a big job I loved working with you on it. I could not have done it without your help, because the migration over, was complicated. And then, you added help, we worked closely together, and you added the book landing page and gave me advice on other ways to make it be very user-friendly for someone both interested in the book, but I do feel that my website reflects who I am. It's, got the wildlife photography in there. My husband and I own a sailboat, which is a very important part of the book. I just realized I should probably at some point show my book. And guess what? Okay, yeah, it's got all my tabs on it, but oh yeah, I've got that fade in out thing. Okay, there we go. Yes, so our sailboat is a very important part of the book, and we've had the boat in our lives for 31 years now. And one of the sources of tension is right after 5 weeks after my husband comes home, and he's still learning how to walk and read, and has balance issues and choking issues. He wants to get out on our boat as a family, and my reaction to that is, whoa, I had that fear of losing him again out on the water, because bad things can happen, even though we were very seasoned boaters and very safe. But anyway, so my website has some of our boating adventures there, and I think if a reader is interested, that it's not just about the book, but it's very easy to learn about the book, to figure out where to order it if you like. And also I want to say I love working with you, and Squarespace makes it so easy to make updates. So I can put if I get a new endorsement, I can put that up there, and the awards are up there. And so it's been just great having it. We did that, I guess, 5 months ahead, and that was I mean, I had a lot to learn in the new format, and I'm so glad I wasn't stumbling. For example, during my book launch, if I couldn't have kept the events page current, that would have been very stressful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I will say your sailing and the other things that you have going on, you do a great job of keeping the website feeling very fresh and on theme with those.
Oh, good.
And so you feel happier now that you've got a place that you can keep current and use to share your news with your audience. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely helped. Yeah, and then of course I do link it occasionally to my social media, so that helps. But it is where I would say, yeah, most of the important news about the book and beyond that is right there for anybody who wants to poke around and learn a little bit or find something.
Yeah, and that leads us on very nicely. So, okay, you have a powerful and beautiful website. How does that then fit for you with the rest of the author marketing that you're doing?
Well, it is like I said, my main site. it's wonderful to be able to direct people there from, say, Facebook, which I appreciate having that, but it's not, the posts I make at Facebook are just little teeny slices. And I also, without question, my website reminds me to, oh, how do I want to put that? That I want to reach out with substantive news, and that's, I have a sort of a newsletter email that I do very infrequently. For anybody worried about getting blasted too much, I'm not posting as often as I would like, but in those stories, I kind of let the reader in on what's happening in our lives. An example is we just brought our boat up from San Francisco to Washington, which turned out to be a very difficult trip. We were going against the wind and the seas, and had a couple of problems, which we solved, but I posted there to kind of tell some of that story and bring people in close. And I can't imagine without my website. During the book launch, it was so important to have that one place where anyone could go to find out if there was, a bookstore author event, or I've got all my interviews up there, and this one will be up there eventually. So there now are, streaming links to those events. But that's made it really easy to have a dynamic calendar, so to speak, available to people who are interested in finding out what might be happening. The other newer portion of the website that I'm really happy to have is I've been excited to be doing some having book clubs choose deep waters to read, and then I'm available to join them either in person if they're meeting close enough, or virtually, and that's been a real very fun. And so if anybody has a book club and they might be interested in reading Deep Waters for it, you can get a book club organizer kit and also discussion guide questions at my website, elizabethanmathews.com. Yeah.
Excellent. I interrupted right at the moment where Beth, you said your website address. So go ahead, repeat that for the recording.
Okay, sure. It's elizabethanmathews.com. Again, Mathews with one T. If you do type in Beth Ann Mathews and Deep Waters, it will come up. It'll pull up as long as you do the one T.
Super, thank you. Yeah, so with so many years writing the book, I know the year that the book has released has been crazy busy for you. Do you have any advice for other authors who are coming up to the time of their book launch?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll try to keep it to 3, but one I've already given. Absolutely, I think if you can, start your website at least a year ahead, a minimum, 5 or 6 months, so that you know how to edit it and you're comfortable with it and you can shape it and tweak it before the pressure. It's kind of wonderful pressure when your book launches, but you don't have a lot of time to be mucking around. You kind of want to be out there with your prospective readers and not behind your computer with head spinning questions. So, and I if you can afford it, I think it's really important to start, if you're building one from scratch, to have a designer design the base of it for you. And one of the things I really loved about Squarespace, I did research on other websites. It felt to me that the company as a whole, it seems, really wants to empower their users to do a lot of their editing. And the way I love working with you, Pauline, because like I said, you created a wonderful base layer. The design and the integration of the different pages is there, and I can go in and make small updates and add material. But the other thing I think is important, I love that you're available, because I think it's sort of like owning a car. You still need tune-ups. And I think I've had, 3 or 4 places actually where I've run into a hurdle where I just can't figure out how to do something. And so we've worked together for just a few hours, and you teach me. That's what I love, is you are such a good mentor and teacher. And I just feel thrilled with how much I understand about Squarespace because of both our in-person Zooms, and then something more recent that I had never experienced. If I have a question, you'll sometimes create a video with the answer in it, and you're showing me, with the mouse and the cursor and the screen there, doing what I need to do, and it is crystal clear. I love that. It saves you a little time, I think, and then I can replay it, and I can go back to it if I forget. And so working with you has been just a joy. Oh, I was on tips, so okay.
Yes,
get started on.
Yeah, well, I love hearing all that. Yes, it's great that you're finding that Squarespace in general is easy to use.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. I spend time making sure I'm the expert for those extra things.
Yes.
So that's tip number 1 during the launch phase is get your website sorted out.
Yeah. A second one I was thinking about is that I think it's important to think ahead of time what kind of professional materials you want to have available to start giving away. And so, for example, most authors know about this, but you can have a business card, bookmarks, postcards made with the cover of your book on it. And I think I remember before one of my first events, I didn't have bookmarks yet made, and I scrambled to do that, and was wishing I had done it a little bit sooner. So I would just encourage people to think about that, and there's a lot of good information on the web about how to do that, and to be sure to include your cover and the key information so people can read you, find you. And then
I received in the mail from you a postcard around the time of the book release. And I must say that was a really nice touch. I mean, obviously, I'm an online marketer. A lot of our marketing and communications in the world today is happening online. It was a real treat to get that extra layer of outreach from you.
I had so much fun. My publicist suggested that because a lot of people are kind of like sort of either don't want to be on social media or their computers. And I have over the years kept a really good address book. And so I sent them out broadly, and I had at almost every book launch I went to, some of which were in Indiana and Alaska and California and Washington, I had someone come up to me to say, "I'm so glad you sent the postcard because I wouldn't have known about it otherwise." And on each one I signed it personally, but I printed on the back. And they were, to me, it was really a fun thing to do if you have time and have an audience that might appreciate that.
Yeah, it helps you stand out for sure.
Yeah. My third tip would be if your book launch includes doing author events at bookstores, and I encourage people to do that. It can be just so. It was way more fun and rewarding and less stressful than I had anticipated. I mean, I'm glad I was a little stressed out early, because that, of course, nudged me to be prepared. But attend in your own hometown or wherever you travel. Attend author events at bookstores. They vary a lot in how the bookstore sets it up. But I think if you go to several, you'll start figuring out, oh, I would like to do that, or maybe I won't read. That person read a little too long. I mean, I had some good advice from my publicist, Caitlin Hamilton Sumi, and she said, we're reading, 12 minutes, no more than 15. And then I really wanted mine to be question driven. And so I let the audience know ahead of time I was going to read 3 very short scenes and then open it to questions. An insider tip for authors only, so everybody else close your ears, is have a couple of friends, mention to a couple of friends ahead of time who are going to be there, or strangers if you have to, that you are going to have questions, and you would like to have a couple people ready in case sometimes there's that audience reaction where everybody's deer in the headlights and no one wants to go first. You can give them a question, or tell them ahead of time if they've read the book, invite them ahead of time to be ready to ask a question. And then that seems to be like a catalyst. At least there were more questions than time, which is how I liked it. If anybody's interested, at my website under events, I do have a video clip of my Copperfield's book author event, which I was really happy with how that went. That was my first reading with lots of friends and people who had been in my writing groups. But you could check that out and see if some of the methods that I used might work for you. But that would be my third tip, is to really, and also in that process, you're supporting bookstores and other authors, and it's fun. It's fun to go to those readings and launches.
Yeah, wonderful. So do some preparation work in the bookstores, and not only then are you more confident as an author, but it helps you be a better partner to work with the store on making the event a success.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And yes, another nice tie into the website then, that you've got more material that shows your platform and what's going on.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, well, I love all this. This is a great blend of what it was like writing the book and the tactics of being out there when the book actually releases as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, for example, future projects or other news?
Well, I do have another book in the wings. I've had to really set it aside for almost the whole year. I've been really focused on the book launch and some publicity for Deep Waters, but I do have another book. I would guess it'll be a year or two before it comes out. It's a memoir. It starts 30 years before Deep Waters, and the working title right now, which may change, is Fateful Decisions. And I'm excited about that. I can't wait to get back to writing, actually, but I'm happy to be have this my first book baby out in the world.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay.
And I guess two more things. I would like to say, Pauline, it was a dream working with you, and I mean that. You are what you laid out after our first conversation for a plan for what we might do was a perfect. It just helped me understand where we were going, the ways you checked in with me and let me know what was happening, how you've taught me so much. You've taught me to fish instead of just handing me a fish, and I really appreciate that. And I love every excuse I have to work with you. It's just a total pleasure. I always learn something from you, and I think of you every time I use some of these tricks, and not tricks, but crucial steps that I might otherwise overlook. So thank you very much for your excellent work. And if anyone wants a personal testimonial for me about working with you, I'm happy to give it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say again, my website is elizabethannmathews.com with one T. And my book is Deep Waters, a memoir of loss, Alaska adventure, and love rekindled.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Pauline.